right now.
Tonight on All In.
The indictment of a former president, of a perhaps candidate for president, would arguably tear the country apart. Is that your concern?
An NBC News exclusive interview.
There's been a lot of criticism, a lot of pressure that the DOJ is kind of behind the power curve here, behind the committee.
The Justice Department goes public as the January 6th committee goes dark.
I think that the hearings did an extremely good job of reminding us how important that day was.
Tonight, Congressman Adam Schiff and former Senator Claire McCaskill on the Merrick Garland interview and the new reporting that the Department of Justice is investigating Donald Trump. Plus, as Pence for president essentially kicks off, can you really agree to disagree after a violent coup attempt?
I don't know that the president and I differ on issues. But we may differ on focus.
And new reporting on the fake elector campaign to upend democracy and the Republican running for governor who's in the middle of it all. But All In starts right now. Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. In the past hour, we just got a huge bit of breaking news. The Department of Justice is investigating Donald Trump. The Washington Post is reporting the DOJ is investigating the ex-president's actions as part of its criminal probe of January 6th. Sources telling the Post that federal prosecutors who are questioning witnesses before a grand jury have asked hours of detailed questions about meetings Trump led in December 2020, January 2021, his pressure campaign on Pence to overturn the election, and what instructions Trump gave his lawyers and advisors about fake electors and sending electors back to the states. Some of the questions focus directly on the extent of Trump's involvement in the fake elector effort led by his outside lawyers, including John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani. Now, of course, at some level, I think we all thought something like this was happening, but there has not been any concrete reporting on this until now. This major news comes tonight as Attorney General Merrick Garland is speaking out for the first time since the January 6th committee wrapped its final public hearing of the summer until the committee returns in September. We're going to play for you his exclusive interview with NBC nightly news anchor Lester Holt. And it comes, of course, at a key moment for Garland. I mean, all eyes are on Attorney General Garland and the Department of Justice, both of which are under pressure to take action in light of the damning set of facts that have been laid out so rigorously by the committee. Over 8 hearings, the committee showed how Donald Trump and his allies willfully, intentionally conspired to overturn a lawful election, culminating in the attempted coup on January 6th. And I got to say, to nearly every legal expert who watched and listened to the evidence, it seems like there is, while not a slam dunk, definitely a criminal case to be investigated here. And then came news that the day after that 8th and final hearing, Mark Short, he's the chief of staff to Mike Pence, testified before a federal grand jury investigating the insurrection in D.C. Then yesterday, we learned that Short wasn't the only Pence official who testified. Pence's chief counsel, Greg Jacob, also appeared before the grand jury, making those 2 officials the most prominent witnesses that we know of that have testified as part of the Department of Justice's criminal investigation before a criminal grand jury. They were both present for key meetings where Donald Trump and his allies tried to pressure Pence into halting the certification of electoral votes on January 6th. Today, we got this stunning report from New York Times publishing previously undisclosed emails that shed new light on the ex-president's fake elector scheme. These are really something else. Quote, the dozens of emails among people connected to the Trump campaign, outside advisors, and close associates of Mr. Trump show a particular focus on assembling lists of people who would claim, with no basis, to be electoral college electors on his behalf in battleground states that he had lost. The author of several of those emails, an Arizona lawyer who helped organize the pro-Trump electors in that state, repeatedly called those very electors fake. That's the word he used. He fully understood what they were up to. Writing in an email, the Trump campaign advisor Boris Epshteyn, quote, we would just be sending in fake electoral votes to Pence so that someone in Congress can make an objection when they start counting votes and start arguing that the fake vote should be counted. In a follow-up to that message, he wrote, alternative votes is probably a better term than fake votes, adding a smiley face emoji. Whew, Nice save there, buddy. Good one. Now, we know that this scheme is part of the Department of Justice investigation. The Washington Post reports that a grand jury issued subpoenas already to 2 Arizona state lawmakers last month seeking communications relating to any effort, plan, or attempt to serve as an elector for Donald Trump or Mike Pence. And those subpoenas are just part of what the Post describes as a significant escalation and expansion of the Justice Department's criminal probe. Around the same time, federal agents fanned out in multiple states to serve subpoenas, execute search warrants, and interview potential witnesses as part of the investigation into the electors' scheme. And amid this massive swirl of activity and speculation and pressure and anticipation, there's Attorney General Merrick Garland, a man who has been completely avoiding interviews, but decided to sit down with Lester Holt. Now, of course, he can't divulge specific details about the investigation. It is still fascinating to hear his perspective at this key moment. Take a listen.
Let's start off and talk about January 6th. We've just watched weeks of some pretty horrific testimony about what led up to January 6th and what happened that day. Just as an American, can you tell me what your impression was of what we heard?
You're talking about the hearings?
The hearings.
Look, I think it is very important. It's an important part of democracy that every American recognizes the truth of what happened on January 6th and in the time surrounding it. I think that this is an important part that we not downgrade or suppress how important that day was. And I think that the hearings did an extremely good job of reminding us, and for people who didn't know in the first place, telling us how important that day was and what a risk it meant for our democracy.
Is the committee offering you anything in terms of an informal roadmap? Are you learning things you didn't know?
Look, the Justice Department has been doing the most wide-ranging investigation in its history, and the committee is doing an enormously wide-ranging investigation as well. It is inevitable that there will be things that they find before we have found them, and is inevitable that there will be things we find that they haven't found. That's what happens when you have 2 wide-ranging investigations going on at the same time. But the Justice Department has, from the beginning, been moving urgently to learn everything we can about this period and to bring to justice everybody who's criminally responsible for interfering with the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to another, which is the fundamental element of our democracy.
You said you're moving quickly at this. There's been a lot of criticism, a lot of pressure that the DOJ is kind of behind the power curve here, behind the committee, not moving quickly enough on what appears to be solid evidence in some cases.
As I said, we have been moving urgently since the very beginning. We have a huge number of prosecutors and agents working on these cases. It is inevitable in this kind of investigation that there will be speculation about what we are doing, who we are investigating, what our theories are. The reason there is this speculation and uncertainty is that a fundamental tenet of what we do as prosecutors and investigators is to do it outside of the public eye. We do that for 2 important reasons. One is to protect the civil liberties of people and events that we're investigating, and the second is to ensure the success and the integrity of our investigation.
Would a criminal referral from the committee carry a lot of weight? Would it be welcomed by the Department of Justice?
So I think that's totally up to the committee. We will have the evidence that the committee has presented, and whatever evidence it gives us. I don't think that the nature of how they style the manner in which information is provided is of particular significance from any legal point of view. That's not to downgrade it or disparage it. It's just that that's not the issue here. We have our own investigation pursuing through the principles of prosecution.
You said in no uncertain terms the other day that no one is above the law. That said, the indictment of a former president, of perhaps candidate for president, would arguably tear the country apart. Is that your concern as you make your decision down the road here? Do you have to think about things like that?
Look, we pursue justice without fear or favor. We intend to hold anyone who was criminally responsible for the events surrounding January 6th, for any attempt to interfere with the lawful transfer of power from one administration to another, accountable. That's what we do. we don't pay any attention to other issues with respect to that.
So if Donald Trump were to become a candidate for president again, that would not change your schedule or how you move forward or don't move forward?
Say again that we will hold accountable anyone who is criminally responsible for attempting to interfere with the legitimate, lawful transfer of power from one administration to the next.
NBC News has spoken to some people who are close to the investigation who worry that the department is overwhelmed by just the sheer size of this investigation. We know several hundred people, just the Capitol alone. Do you have a capacity, do the courts have a capacity to see these cases through?
I'm confident that we do. Of course, we'd like more resources, and if Congress wants to give it to us, that would be very nice. But we have people from all prosecutors and agents from all over the country working on this matter, and I have every confidence in their ability, their professionalism, their dedication to this task.
How is your department dealing with the pressure? Every day you wake up, there's a column in a newspaper talking about what you will do and when you will do it.
So this I've said before, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. The only pressure that I, or my prosecutors, or the agents feel is the pressure to do the right thing. That's the only way we can pursue the rule of law. That's the only way we can keep the confidence of the American people in the rule of law, which is an essential part of our democratic system.
Attorney General Merrick Garland speaking out tonight as we are learning that his Department of Justice is reportedly investigating Donald Trump's actions to overturn the election as part of a criminal probe. Joining me now is Claire McCaskill. She's a former Democratic senator and a former prosecutor from Missouri. Claire, it's great to have you on. First, just your reaction to the Washington Post reporting that indicates that what we suspected, what's been hinted at, what's been speculated about is in fact the case right now. There is a Department of Justice investigation that involves Donald Trump.
Look, Pence's top aides being in front of a criminal grand jury is big. Emails disclosing that Trump's lawyers and operatives were using the term fake electors around their illegal scheme to stop the transfer of power. That's big. But perhaps the biggest is this, that they were getting the chief traffic cop in Trump Crazy Town, Mark Meadows' phone records in April. That DOJ back in April was pulling Meadows' phone records. We know that Meadows had his hand in all of this, and we know he was taking orders directly from Trump. So that is a very, very big deal. And I've got to say, I am pleasantly surprised that this has been going on. I frankly am astounded that it hadn't leaked sooner than this. But this is good news, I think, for America.
Yeah, that point, I just want to highlight the point you made because we didn't highlight it in the opening, that they have subpoenaed Meadows' phone records, or they have access. They have Meadows' phone records. And obviously, to your point, what we know from just the text messages the committee got before he stopped his cooperation, and from all the testimony, we call him the traffic cop. I mean, this was clearly, next to Trump, probably the individual most central at the, in the entire plot in terms of different voices going through him.
Yeah, he was the intersection of everything. He was listening to Trump day in and day out, refusing to accept the reality that he was being told by everyone surrounding him. He was getting all the input from the pretend lawyers, from Team Normal and Team Nuts. He was getting all of that. And he was trying to do Trump's bidding. And I think if they have the goods on him, this is where people forget how different DOJ is than the House committee. You have all kinds of leverage tools. You have immunity, where you can say to Mark Meadows, we will not prosecute you. We've got you, but you've got to give us more information. Things like that will be brought to bear with the grand jury that could really make a difference in this deal.
You also, you mentioned Greg Jacob and Mark Short. I mean, this is partly, as much as Merrick Garland says, this is not about politics, it's not about anything, this is just the rule of law, and I think it's important that he says that, right? All the people in the Department of Justice understand what they're doing. They understand the stakes, and they also understand what will and won't be public. It just strikes me that you've got these two Pence aides coming in before an actual grand jury, right? That's a step that you take fairly far down the road, and also when you know that that's going to be public. The testimony of those aides marked the first time it has become publicly known. Figures with firsthand knowledge of what took place inside the White House in the tumultuous days before the attack have cooperated with federal prosecutors. What do you think about just what that means about where they are in this, that those two individuals have appeared before a federal grand jury?
Further along than I thought they were. Because typically you don't get sworn testimony in front of a grand jury until you know what they're going to say and you know how you can hold them to the facts in front of a grand jury. So that's very important. And remember, there's a really important piece of evidence in this, and that is that Donald Trump called the chairman of the Republican National Committee and then handed the phone to Eastman for him to explain to her their phony, fraudulent plan to deny the American people the person who they actually voted for president. And that is a really important fact. And if they've got Eastman's stuff in there, they've got that too. That means that Trump knew everything that was going on. And now I just hope we have reporting not too long from now that there's a target letter with his name on it.
Well, and here's the other point, and you just noted this, that, again, one of the things that's been uncovered by the committee is this evidence of consciousness of guilt, right? Electors being told not to tell people about their scheme, not to sort of keep it off email. Then we've got this remarkable document, this is reported by the New York Times, in which they're just admitting what they're doing is unlawful. This is an Arizona attorney to a Trump campaign official. I just talked to the gentleman who did that memo, Ken Chesborough. His idea is basically that all of us, GA, Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, have our electors send in their votes, even though the votes aren't legal under federal law because they're not signed by the governor. Kind of wild, creative, I'm happy to discuss. I mean, that's a pretty close to a smoking gun evidence of consciousness of guilt, or that you know what you're doing is unlawful when you say they're not legal.
Well, we had testimony in front of the committee that even Eastman admitted that the Supreme Court would find what they were trying to do illegal. I think we have a lot of consciousness of guilt. I think the ultimate decision that Garland has been wrestling with, and I hope he's come to terms with it, there is a risk to indicting a former president in terms of what it does to this country. But I believe in these circumstances, the risk is so much greater if they let this guy go with not any consequences. And that's really where he is at this moment in history. And let's hope he comes down on the right side of it.
I have come to view it in exactly those terms as well. Claire McCaskill, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yes.
Coming up, as I just mentioned, they really broke the Stringer Bell rule. Trump's associates detailed their unlawful fake elector plans in writing. I'll talk to January 6th committee member Congressman Adam Schiff about the significance of this revelation and Merrick Garland's next steps after this.
Meet Leon the Third, Leon the Second, and Leon the First of them all. 3 generations who all bank differently with Chase. Leon's saving up for his first set of wheels. Nice try.
Really?
This Leon's paying for his paint job on the spot. And this Leon, as a Chase private client, he's in the south of France taking out cash with no ATM fees. That's because this family of Leons has Chase.
Actually, it's Leon.
Ooh la la. One bank for now, for later, for life. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Thousands of years ago, even if you were sitting at the top, you really couldn't count on support. It took centuries for office seating to evolve, but there were some major holes in the design. Then people were inspired to do away with office chairs completely. Yeah, that didn't work. In 2020 came the breakthrough the world has been waiting for. The first ever XHMT heat and massage chair by X-Chair. X-Chair just made history's most comfortable work chair even better by integrating heat and massage into our patented dynamic variable lumbar support. Waves of glorious massage that wake up tired muscles? Yes. Soothing heat that melts away daily tension? You bet. The all-new XHMT massage chair by X-Chair. The future feels good. Upgrade to the ultimate work chair with the one and only XHMT by X-Chair. Use the code on your screen and get $100 off plus a free footrest.
My active psoriatic arthritis can slow me down. Now, Skyrizi helps me get going by treating my skin and joints. Along with significantly clearer skin, Skyrizi helps me move with less joint pain, stiffness, swelling, and fatigue. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses. Skyrizi attaches to and reduces a source of excess inflammation that can lead to skin and joint symptoms. With Skyrizi, 90% clearer skin and less joint pain is possible.
Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine, or plan to.
With Skyrizi, there's nothing like the feeling of improving my skin and joints. And that means everything. Now's the time to talk to your doctor about how Skyrizi can help treat your psoriatic arthritis so you can get going. Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
Hi, I'm Steve, and I live in Austin, Texas. I work as a personal assistant to the owner of a large manufacturing firm. I've got anywhere from 10 to 50 projects going at any given time. I absolutely have to be sharp. Let me tell you, I was struggling with my memory. It was going downhill. My friend recommended that I try Prevagen, and over time, it made a very significant difference in my memory and in my cognitive ability. I started to feel a much better sense of well-being.
Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
When you have Xfinity XFi, you have peace of mind built in at no extra cost. Advanced security helps keep your family protected online. Pause Wi-Fi whenever for ultimate control with the Xfinity app. And family-safe browsing gives parents one less thing to worry about. Security, control, and peace of mind. With Xfinity XFi, it's all built in at no extra cost.
Latinas are not a monolith. Yet there's something inherently Latina about every single one of us.
We were taught to be grateful, yes, and quiet.
You can still be grateful. We just don't have to be quiet.
The Culture is Latina. Sunday, August 7th at 10 on MSNBC.
Let's start off and talk about January 6th. We've just watched weeks of some pretty horrific testimony about what led up to January 6th and what happened that day. Just as an American, can you tell me what your impression was of what we heard?
You're talking about the hearings?
The hearings.
Look, I think it is very important. It's an important part of democracy that every American recognizes the truth of what happened on January 6th and in the time surrounding it. I think that this is an important part that we not downgrade or suppress how important that day was. And I think that the hearings did an extremely good job of reminding us, and for people who didn't know in the first place, telling us how important that day was and what a risk it meant for our democracy.
That was Attorney General Merrick Garland's interview today with NBC News' Lester Holt, confirming he is following the January 6th committee hearings, and they are doing an extremely good job. I'm joined now by a member of the January 6th committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He was the lead impeachment manager in Donald Trump's first impeachment trial. And Congressman, I think you've been as outspoken as anyone about your view that there is something here for the Department of Justice to investigate, that there is abundant factual predicate for a criminal investigation. Today, we have reporting by the Washington Post that apparently they are doing just that, that Donald Trump is being investigated as part of this criminal investigation. What's your response to that?
Well, you know, it's hard to read too much into what the Washington Post disclosed. It said that, you know, witnesses are being asked questions about the president's role. That doesn't necessarily mean the president is under investigation. You would expect that witnesses would be asked about their interactions with anyone involved in the plot to overturn the election. But look, I think the Attorney General today was saying all the right things. And I noticed a difference, at least I perceived a difference between what he'd been saying earlier about focusing on all those involved in the attack on January 6th, and now talking more broadly about the overall plot to overturn the election. So I would hope that if the department is truly following the evidence wherever it leads, it will recognize it has been leading to Donald J. Trump.
That, I want to just have you expound on that a little bit, because I caught that too when he said basically people, I think the terminology, criminally responsible or criminally responsible for the attempt to stop the peaceful transfer of power between one administration to the next, which is a more expansive view of what the crime was, I think, than what we had seen before. But it sounds like you think that caught your ear as well.
Absolutely, it did. And frankly, this was the main criticism I'd had previously about the department. That is, yes, it was doing an expansive investigation in 50 states of all those who participated in the attack, those who conspired in a seditious way about the attack. But it was very focused on the violence of January 6th, which is obviously of keen importance. But there were multiple lines of effort to overturn the election. And some of those other lines of effort, the president on the phone with the Secretary of State in Georgia, pushing him to find 11,780 votes that don't exist. The president telling people, just say the election is corrupt and let me and the Republican members of Congress do the rest. That says that there are other actions beyond the violence of that day that need to be investigated. And today it sounded like that's what the department is doing.
One of the lines of investigation the department's pursuing, we know from legal documents, subpoenas that have been served in public reporting, is about the fake electors. And the fake electors have been the subject of a lot of work by the committee as well. We've learned a lot from your committee about the fake electors. I want to just read you this email the New York Times obtained from a Trump lawyer that kind of lays out what this is all about and get your reaction to it. This is a lawyer named Jack Walenchik to Boris Epstein, says, we would just be sending in fake electoral votes to Pence so that someone in Congress can make an objection when they start counting votes and start arguing that the fake votes should be counted. Then later says alternative votes is probably a better term than fake votes, smiley face emoji. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, all of this is really key evidence of intent. That is an intent to defraud, the voters, to defraud the United States of the results of the election. It's, in writing, people acknowledging, okay, these are just fake. We're going to present these fake electors as a pretext to allow people in Congress to try to stop the transfer of power. All of these things where there's an admission that, okay, there isn't evidence of fraud. Giuliani's comments, well, we've got lots of theories, we just don't have any facts. These are really what, as a former prosecutor, you look for in terms of evidence of criminal wrongdoing. As a member of Congress, we look at in terms of the blatant effort to corruptly overturn this election and stop the peaceful transfer of power. Those emails pretty damning in the language they use, and also others talking about trying to keep it hidden what they're doing.
Final question for you, and I know you have to vote quickly. We've seen a bunch of witness testimony. Some of that, I think, has been quite forthcoming, expansive even. Some of it has been very terse, very guarded, even folks that are ostensibly cooperating, right, with a subpoena. How would you characterize the testimony of two men in particular, Mark Short, who we've seen recorded depositions of, and Greg Jacob, who was Vice President Pence's general counsel, who appeared live before the committee? Those two men, of course, we know has gone through a federal grand jury. What's your characterization of their level of forthcomingness in their testimony?
I've really tried not to characterize the testimony in that way. I will say that I think a lot of witnesses were candid with us, and a lot of witnesses wouldn't answer certain questions and asserted privileges, and we had to accept, at least for the moment, reserving the right to litigate the question later, we had to accept those limitations. And some of those limitations really prevented us from getting some of the key questions answered. So, I don't want to make it specific to these two gentlemen, but we would have people who I believe were telling us the truth, but at the same time would not answer certain questions. And I think they had the discretion to answer them. I think many of the claims of privilege are not well-founded, and that is, of course, deeply frustrating to the fact-finding process.
Yes, the theory surrounding Cipollone's invocations are just, I think, completely nonsense and baseless. That's my own editorializing. Congressman Adam Schiff, I'll let you go vote. Thank you very much.